Hello, everybody. So this is going to be a slightly different video today. I wanted to talk specifically about the short film categories. So every year, after the nominations are announced, there's usually a mad dash to catch up on whatever Oscar-nominated features you have yet to see, and usually that includes trying to watch as much of these short films as possible. Because usually, once the nominations are announced, you haven't seen any of them, unless you tried to watch them back when they were shortlisted, but that's always a gamble because they might not be nominated. And it got me thinking. Once upon a time, Pixar would play a short film in front of their features. Technically, they kind of still do that, but it feels like they've been phasing that out recently. I bring this up because it used to be you look at the nominees for a short film and it's like, oh, I've seen one of the animated shorts nominees because that played in front of the Pixar movie this year. And it got me thinking, why have we as a society gotten rid of the idea of putting a short film in front of the feature film? Because, maybe people have shorter attention spans now, but if you're gonna put so many trailers in front of the film anyway, you might as well put in a short film just to be that extra buffer of, oh, someone's still running late, someone wants to pee before the movie starts, let's put a short film there. Or maybe some people might actually want to watch the short film, and it actually might be kind of an ideal setting to see a short film in, because I do enjoy the process of trying to scramble to watch all the short films after nominations, but imagine if we could have been watching the short films all year round because they were all attached to these big movies. And then it got me thinking, okay, so imagine you're trying to check off every Oscar-nominated film that you haven't seen yet, and you're trying to watch the shorts and you're trying to watch the features. Well, potentially, a good way to go about doing that would be to watch an Oscar-nominated short and then watch the feature right after it. What if we could actually pair short films and features together? And so it's a little screening in your room. You watch a short and you watch a feature. That's a fun little idea. The only problem is, how do you pair a short and a feature? Because you might just be like, oh, I'll watch this short and this feature together, and but then you get into that slightly awkward position of maybe it's a really feel-good short and a really depressing feature, or the other way around. Maybe the two just don't go together at all. And so I came up with this little idea, and this little thing I could do for fun. Let's say I'm in charge of running some kind of film festival, and I've got to pair all 15 of the Oscar-nominated short films up with a feature. And originally, I was going to put the 5 animated shorts with the 5 animated features and the 5 documentary shorts with the 5 documentary features, but then I was like, you know what, that's too limiting. Let's just try and pair any short, animated, live action, or documentary up with any movie, and just see what happens. Now, I got to admit, I first came up with this idea in the middle of last year, and I was really excited about it, and I went back a few years and tried to do it with each of the short lineups, and to be honest, it was harder than I thought it was going to be. Some of these shorts and films go together fine, and some of them you really, really struggle to find a match, and I came up with some pretty awkward combinations that I am not sure entirely work. And initially, looking at this lineup, I was really struggling to make some of these connections, but I thought about it, and I watched a lot of movies. I've seen almost every Oscar-nominated feature film now. There are 35 Oscar-nominated features in total, so I was able to knock out a lot of them. And after really, really doing some digging and watching as many of the short films as I could, which still is not all of them, I think I got to a pretty good place. I will say, though, I feel more confident about the short films I've seen than the shorts that I haven't seen, for obvious reasons, and I would love to get some feedback about this. If you've seen these shorts, if you feel like you don't really like one of the pairings, let me know, but definitely let me know if you have a better idea of what short could be paired with what feature. Because I think this could be a really, really fun exercise, and this could potentially help a few people knock out some final Oscar-nominated contenders. Although we are kind of getting close to the wire, so maybe in the future I'll try to do this earlier in the season. But This is just a fun little video. Let me know what you think down in the comments. So I want to start with Best Documentary Short Film. Our first nominee is Death by Numbers, and I have decided to pair it with Black Box Diaries. Now, this is really simple for me. I actually have yet to see both of these, but just going off of the descriptions, these really do fit together. Granted, one of them is about a school shooting and one of them is about sexual assault, but they both are directed by women who were victims of an attack who are now using their filmmaking power to directly go after their attacker. And when you put it like that, I think they would make a really, really powerful combination in tandem with each other because they're both about women taking control of their own narrative and refusing to be defined as a victim. So those two make a lot of sense together. And then we have our next pairing, which is where things very quickly start to go off the rails. I Am Ready Warden is one of the hardest ones to find a match for because the short film involves someone who is a prisoner on death row who is awaiting trial, who is changed. He says that he's changed and is reaching out to the families of his victims who are having mixed emotions on whether or not they believe that he's changed. And I sort of went back and forth on a few different things, and then suddenly Emilia Perez stood out to me. And I know that it's very, very different tonally, but both I Am Ready Warden and Emilia Perez have this central question of somebody has done very violent things in the past, and now they've changed, but is it ever truly possible to change and to shed that behavior? I feel bad doing this because I don't like the idea of pairing Emilia Perez with anything. I would like to pretend that Emilia Perez isn't a 13-time Oscar nominee, but if you still haven't seen it and you're an Oscar completionist, this does make the most sense as what you would want to compare it with. Thematically, there is a connection. Now, I did also, if you're not such a big fan of that pairing, the other one that I toyed around with was Sugarcane, because that also deals with people in the aftermath of a tragedy trying to come to terms with what happened to them. But I ultimately don't think that that really fits because in Sugarcane, the people who were wronged have every right to be angry and pissed, and they are definitely not going to ask for forgiveness like the character in I Am Ready Warden is asking for forgiveness. So, yeah, it's a little messed up, but this is the pairing that I have currently. Now let's get to a more interesting pairing. Incident, the documentary short film, I've decided to pair with September 5. So Incident is focusing on a police shooting and shows us real-time footage of what happened, and the way that it's edited together reminded me a lot of September 5 and how that it's a bunch of news reporters trying to cover this real-life tragedy happening feet away from them. And it really is a testament to the power of editing and the power of journalism, the power of capturing these important things on camera, while also both dealing with some really harrowing events. So I do think these are a good fit together. Instruments of a Beating Heart. This one was a little tricky because there's not as many feature-length films this year that focus on children, but I eventually landed on Sing Sing. Instruments of a Beating Heart is really about a child who is finding their home in the arts and wants to be a part of something, wants to give something, and really finds her voice through the arts, or through playing music in this case. But Sing Sing is also about a group of people coming together and forming a little community with the arts, specifically with putting on a play. And I think they both have a very charming, feel-good vibe to them. So I think they actually make a pretty nice pairing with each other. And the last documentary short nominee is The Only Girl in the Orchestra, which I've decided to pair with Elton John, Never Too Late. They both involve musical legends who are very humble about the fact that they're sort of past their prime and are sort of gracefully stepping down, while also acknowledging all the fun they had on the way there. So I do think these two work well together, and the subjects of these two documentaries both seem like really nice, charming people. Now, animated short was where I ran into a lot of problems, because I have not seen any of these, as I discussed in my video on animated short. Beautiful Men, I decided to pair with A Real Pain, and maybe this one is more of a vibes thing, but they're both about men expressing a healthy masculinity that is not toxic, getting to come together and just appreciate each other and also acknowledge their pain. And I think for whatever reason, these both have. It's hard to put a finger on it, but they just feel very, very similar in tone to me. And if I can't match anything that happens in the plot, I at least try to match the tone. In the Shadow of the Cypress was the single hardest one to match. I really, really struggled here because it's about a father with PTSD trying to take care of his daughter, and I looked for something on parenting. I considered The Wild Robot, but ultimately the tone just seemed to be very, very different. I tried a few different things and none of them seemed to really fit. It wasn't until I really did some digging and I found out that this is an Iranian short film that took a long time to make because of issues from the Iranian government, and it was a real testament to get the film out there. And that, of course, reminded me of Seed of the Sacred Fig, which went through a similar process. So maybe these two don't have a ton in common, plot-wise or even thematic-wise, but they do make an interesting double feature in terms of here is the art that is coming out of Iran, that the government is trying to stop this art from coming out, but it's important that in these tough times we can still make art. See, now I'm thinking about adding Porcelain War, but no, these two I do think make a good pairing together. Magic Candies. Don't know a whole lot about this one, but it seems like the most child-friendly out of all the animated short nominees, so I have decided to pair it with Wallace and Gromit. I believe they're both stop motion, they're both very, very cute and charming, and neither one is super deep, but they're both very entertaining. And not much beyond that, but I can definitely see Magic Candies playing in front of Wallace and Gromit. Wander to Wonder was another really, really tricky one because this is sort of a surreal film in which a group of characters from a children's show are sort of trying to put on episodes after their creator has died. And if Saturday Night were here, I would want to pair it up. If I Saw the TV Glow was here, I would want to pair it up. But none of those are here. And so trying to find something that was a suitable match was really, really tricky. I eventually landed on A Different Man, mainly because they both have kind of a surreal, slightly uncomfortable tone to them. And I think that tone thing is what I want to match above all else. I know not all of them fit that criteria, but I do think this one kind of matches, and A Different Man, half of it does heavily involve putting on a play, so there is still that element of trying to create art in a very surreal fashion. This is one of the picks that I'm least pleased with, but I wasn't really sure what else to put there. And finally, Yuck, I decided to pair it with Inside Out 2. Now, granted, I probably could have swapped this and Wallace and Gromit between Magic Candies and Yuck, but I think it just made more sense to me to put Yuck with Inside Out 2 because they're both involving puberty. Albeit from slightly different angles, but they're both sort of a child's view of what it is like when you start experiencing these body changes. So I think this is a solid enough pairing, and they're both very child-friendly films. And that brings us to the category of Best Live Action Short, starting with Alien. And yes, I did toy with the idea of putting Alien Romulus there just to be funny, but I don't think those two have any real thematic connections, so I left it alone. And this film does deal with a harsh government, a harsh regime, as it were, in the immigration process. So I thought about either Seed of the Sacred Fig or I'm Still Here, but ultimately I landed on The Apprentice. Even if these two films don't have a ton thematically involved, I think they make an interesting double feature simply because Alien takes place specifically in Trump's America, and the movie actually does reference Trump at one point. So I think it's oddly fitting. If you're going to pair The Apprentice up with anything, it would be best to have this short where we see the effect of what Trump's America has become and how harmful that has been for so many people. And then the feature starts and it's like, let's rewind back to the very beginning to see how we got here. I think that makes a really, really powerful statement. Anuja is next, and this is another one that was tricky to pair because there's not a lot of child characters in the Best Feature nominees. But when I saw Memoir of a Snail, for some reason, I kept thinking back to Anuja. And it's funny because Memoir of a Snail could pair nicely with some of the other movies, like the animated contenders, but for some reason, Anuja and Memoir of a Snail, there is this connection because it's these two siblings who both really care about each other and are growing up poor and don't have a lot but have each other and are sort of having to make sacrifices for each other. And I think, obviously, Memoir of a Snail is darker than Anuja, but I do think there is that through line about the sibling bond. And I think there's a really strong connection there. I think the siblings in Anuja and the siblings in Memoir of a Snail really do share a lot of common ground. So that's the pairing I came up with. Then we have I'm Not a Robot, and I also toyed with the idea of putting Wild Robot here just to be funny, but realistically, I think it has to be the substance. Granted, this I'm Not a Robot is not as bizarre and does not go as far as the substance. Few films do, but it is provocative. It is a bit of a thriller with some slightly satirical elements to it. It takes place not quite in our world, and there is some light feminism there and some questions on autonomy, female autonomy. So I do think these two do feel oddly fitting in a weird way. Okay, then we get to one of the hardest ones to pair, which was The Last Ranger. And I don't know too much about this short. It's another one that I haven't seen, but I know that it involves poaching of animals, which is a really harrowing subject matter. And my mind landed on Flow. And maybe that's being a little bit simplistic about it, but they both involve animals who are in danger, and they both arguably involve environmentalism. And I think it's effective to see this is what humans are doing to animals in one short, and then the feature comes and it's like, this is what animals are doing when they're by themselves and they have to survive. I don't know, this is one of the weaker links in my opinion, but I couldn't really figure out what else to put there. Actually, Wicked is technically about animal rights, but something tells me that would work even less. And then the final one is The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent. And I actually originally had Seed of the Sacred Fig here until I realized that it worked better with Shadow of the Cypress, so I just decided to move in I'm Still Here. I think that works well in showcasing a harsh regime, a really bad situation, and the question of do you stand up or do you conform? It's not the best connection, but I think it works solidly enough. So those are the 15 nominated short films paired up with 15 nominated features. Please let me know if you enjoyed this, and also please let me know if you have any other suggestions of how to pair these shorts and these features together. The 20 nominated features that were not paired with a short were Alien Romulus, Honora, Better Man, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, The Girl with the Needle, Gladiator 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Maria, Nickel Boys, No Other Land, Nosferatu, Porcelain War, The 6888, Soundtrack of a Coup d'etat, Sugarcane, Wicked, and The Wild Robot. Some of those are kind of hard to pair with a short, like movies that are more action-oriented, Alien Romulus, Dune, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Gladiator. There's not a lot of action short films that are nominated. There's not a ton of spectacle short films that are nominated. There's some cute ones, and then there's some harrowing ones, and most of them tend to be harrowing. So actually being able to put these together was tricky, but I actually am, for the most part, satisfied with these lineups. And please let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later. Bye.